I don't look at the WNBA. A lot of people would say, oh, I've never closed the door on coming back to the women either. Like, to me, how could I? That's my heart. That's my roots. And so I never closed the door on any opportunity. And so if I went back to the WNBA, don't blink.
Listen. Hey, women's basketball fans, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2022. But just in case you missed it, there was a bunch that went down in 2021, including South Carolina gets their first loss. Becky Hammon officially named the head coach of the Las Vegas Aces. And on today's show, we're going to take you to her first press conference, her return to the WNBA, and her return to the Las Vegas Aces franchise. That and more coming up on this episode of Locked on Women's Basketball.
You are Locked on Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey again, women's basketball fans. Erica Lindsay Ayala, your host of Locked on Women's Basketball. As always, we want to thank you for making Locked on Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. I'm excited to be back with you in 2022, and especially because I get to report on the news of Becky Hammon. We are going to spend most of today's episode talking about that, but a few other little tidbits that are important to know. And first, let's head over to NCAA, where it's Missouri that upsets South Carolina in overtime. That is their first win against an AP number one. It is the first loss on the season for South Carolina. Oh, baby. Big time win, a great screen, a freaking layup to win the game. It was amazing. And if you missed it, I'll have some links that you can check out in the show notes. So speaking of the NCAA, let's go to your power rankings. And now this is through January 2nd. So you have South Carolina still at number one for the Associated Press. They have then Stanford, Louisville, Arizona, and North Carolina State rounding out the top five. Indiana, Tennessee, Michigan, Texas, and Maryland in your top 10. Connecticut, at 11. Iowa State at 12. So we have LSU at 14, LSU at 13, Baylor at 14, Georgia at 15, Georgia Tech at 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 is Duke, BYU, North Carolina, and Notre Dame. All right. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about women's basketball for sure. And now I always like to send you over to Autumn Johnson at NCAA, and here are the power rankings for Autumn. You've got Louisville at number one, South Carolina at 2, Stanford at 3, Indiana at 4, NC State at 5, UConn is at 6, Arizona at 7, Michigan at 8, Maryland at 9, and rounding out the top 10 for Autumn Johnson over at NCAA.com is the Tennessee Lady Vols. So you see that there's a bit of differentiation between the Associated Press and between NCAA. So what do you think? Is South Carolina still the number one team, or has Louisville owned and earned that number one spot? We've got UConn at 6 in the NCAA poll, but at 11 in the AP poll. Let me know what you're feeling if you're watching on YouTube in the comments, or hit us up at Locked on WBB on social media. You can always hit me up if you're watching. It's right there at elindsay08. That's ELINDSAY08. But I'm going to spend a decent amount of time on this show talking about Becky Hammon, officially announced on the 31st, the last day of 2021. Unfortunately, we lost a real one in Betty White, but we gained and welcomed back a sister in Becky Hammon to women's basketball. So that was pretty exciting. And just today, Becky Hammon spoke to media along with Nikki Fargas. And we got some interesting information, a little bit more on the hiring process overall, and some great quotes from Becky Hammon. That's what's coming up next on Locked on Women's Basketball. Right now, though, I'm going to tell you about Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? Because it's a business scam to get you out of your money. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Now, this is a new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, you don't want, or that you simply forgot about. And on average, Truebill users save $720 a year with the Truebill app. And Truebill, as a concierge, the Truebill concierge is always there for you when you need them to cancel unwanted subscriptions. I know I have definitely paid for subscriptions longer than I intended to, and if I had Truebill, I would be in the green. And so we don't want you to fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now to Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you, as always, for listening to Locked On Women's Basketball, making us your first listen. And for your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. You get nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. Listen to Locked On Now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you can watch Locked On NBA on the YouTube channel. So go check it out. It's good stuff. We also do it for Locked On NHL. Highly recommend. But speaking of the NBA, y'all fumbled the bag with Becky Hammon. And I'm going to start with the goods because LaChina Robinson, who I've talked about before, was on the call today as Becky Hammon was being introduced. And she asked, other than probably what Pepper Pursley, and I really liked what Ari Chambers asked, this was probably my favorite question of the entire session. LaChina Robinson asking Becky Hammon if her experience interviewing for head coaching jobs in the NBA led her back to the WNBA. Here's what Becky Hammon had to say.
Hi, Becky, LaChina Robinson, ESPN. I'm just curious, how much of a role, if at all, had your NBA head coaching interviews had in the timing of this change and maybe possibly pushing you more towards leaving for the WNBA?
Ooh, that is a loaded question, LaChina. Thank you for that.
Okay, had to get you.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. And I've said this before in interviews, in some ways, like, I feel like I was very close. This was not really about the NBA or the WNBA. This was about me personally being ready to have a team and wanting to have a team and wanting to sit in that chair and then being presented with an opportunity to do so. And, NBA jobs are hard to get. In some ways, I feel like the NBA maybe is close. In other ways, I feel like they're a long ways off from hiring. I don't know when it could happen. What I know is the Aces have 100% of my attention and my energies. And I'm super proud to be their head coach and lead this group of girls. I never left out coming back to the WNBA because I love the WNBA. I'm passionate about the women in it, and not only what they do on the court, but what they represent. And so I'm excited to give back and get involved and just jump 2 feet in.
Thanks, Becky. And really quick question for Nikki. Nikki, just curious on what the timing was of reaching out to Becky. Like when did that happen and what prompted that?
I don't think Becky realized, but I was already sending those vibes to her when we were unveiling her retired jersey. Like literally, I was holding her hand and I I was sending it to you then, Becky. No, the timing, obviously we wanted to be respectful of what we needed to accomplish this season. And then after the season, Bill and I sat down and we discussed, and we've had multiple discussions before the season ended. But we discussed too what's going to be the future of the Aces, who's going to lead this franchise. And so we were put together, like I mentioned earlier. We had our short list, and Becky was the first person and to be quite honest, the only person that I reached out to, and the Spurs were unbelievable in granting us permission to talk with Becky. But we were also being very sensitive of the fact that she is also with the Spurs. And we wanted to be patient because, I understand this is a big decision for she and her family. And having uprooted my family, I get that. And so there was this period where we wanted, any questions that she had, we were ready to answer them. So we were patient. I don't have a lot of patience, but with Becky, I have plenty. But we were
very patient for sure.
Yeah, we were very patient, but it obviously it worked out. But I will tell you, when I first was able to, when Bill and I talked about Becky, we both were like, if we can get her, this would be amazing. I mean, we knew that, and we knew it was going to be a game changer. Because that's all she does. She changes the landscape of where her feet are. And so we're excited about that too.
Oh, there is definitely more there, but that's what Becky Hammon did give us. As you know, if you are a longtime listener to Locked On Women's Basketball, that Becky Hammon is on a very short list of people that I am dying to interview before I retire from sports journalism altogether. And so while I was not able to ask her a question on this particular call, I am feeling confident that there will be something from me on Becky Hammon coming soon. So you're going to have to stay tuned for that. And I might need to follow up on this because I thought it was a great question. And I want to know all the things. So we'll have to see if I get that sit down with Becky Hammon. But here's something else that she said consistently. So I'm going to cut now to the open. Becky Hammon talking about WNBA being home.
That was obviously a snapshot. Actually, now that I hear you tell the story, I'm like, were you after me way back then? Like, I'm not sure, because you guys obviously brought myself and my family in and treated us great. We had a great weekend, really fun weekend, getting to know you. And I think that actually probably was the first foundational piece to putting this all together. When I heard Nikki would be reaching out to me, to one of my friends, I said, really? I was like, why? She's like, talk to you about a head coaching job. I was like, oh, okay. I feel like I've always been open-minded, and sure enough, talks obviously progressed, and me and my family, we just came to the conclusion that the Las Vegas Aces would be the best spot. And Mark's commitment, Nikki's commitment, the people that they're bringing along, Jennifer Azy, it's like, how can I not be a part of this group? You just could feel that they were building something special. So I'm super excited to be back in the W. I'm super excited to be leading this group of girls. And let's go. I'm ready for 2022.
Hi, thank you, Jiggy. I have a question for Coach Hammon and for Nikki. So, Coach, congrats on the new job. I can imagine there's a lot that goes into a decision like this for you. Can you just walk us through that process?
Yeah, you're right. A lot did go into this decision, a lot of sleepless nights, to be quite honest. But at the end of the day, this is a tremendous opportunity. Like I said, the leadership that Mark and Nikki, and the direction that they want to take the organization, and not just the organization, but also the WNBA, is something that could not be ignored. And so after grappling many nights, honestly, over it, I can tell you, Pepper, too, when she first called, I had no intentions of leaving the NBA at this point. And after talking to her and wrestling and throwing around different ideas and stuff, obviously I came to the conclusion that this was the best spot for me and my family, and an opportunity for me to, sit in the big chair and be a head coach of a major professional sports league. And so I feel like I'm ready to have my own team. And this is the organization that made it very, very obvious they wanted me really, really bad. And so it's always good to be wanted. And so it quickly became evident to me that, Las Vegas was the place for me.
And so there you have it, folks. Becky Hammon. And for those who are not following us on YouTube, you should definitely do that, because I'm going to post the entire press conference for you. We had amazing people. I mentioned Pepper. I mentioned Ari. Jackie Powell had amazing questions. So many great people that you need to know covering women's basketball. And we closed out with the next asking some great questions as well. So make sure that you subscribe to Locked On Women's Basketball over on YouTube. I'm going to post that whole thing for you, in addition to obviously this episode, which is more my analysis. So coming up next on Locked On Women's Basketball, we're going to hear more from Becky Hammon, but I'm also going to focus on Nikki Fargas and the process of getting Becky Hammon on board and what that means for bad boy Bill Laimbeer. As always, thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Erica Lindsay Ayala. We are going to stay with Becky Hammon, and we're going to introduce Nikki Fargas. So the Las Vegas Aces have done a lot of work to recruit top-tier talent. And here's what Nikki Fargas had to say about the hiring of Becky Hammon. For those who don't know, she is the president of the Las Vegas Aces.
Thanks, Becky. And really quick question for Nikki. Nikki, just curious on what the timing was of reaching out to Becky. When did that happen and what prompted that?
I don't think Becky realized, but I was already sending those vibes to her when we were unveiling her retired jersey. Like literally, I was holding her hand and I was sending it to you then, Becky. No, the timing, obviously we wanted to be respectful of what we needed to accomplish this season. And then after the season, Bill and I sat down and we discussed, and we've had multiple discussions before the season ended. But we discussed too what's going to be the future of the Aces, who's going to lead this franchise. And so we were put together, like I mentioned earlier. We had our short list, and Becky was the first person and to be quite honest, the only person that I reached out to, and the Spurs were unbelievable in granting us permission to talk with Becky. But we were also being very sensitive of the fact that she is also with the Spurs, and we wanted to be patient because I understand this is a big decision for she and her family, and having uprooted my family, I get that, and so there was this period where we wanted, any questions that she had, we were ready to answer them. So we were patient. If you, I don't have a lot of patience, but with Becky, I have plenty. But we were
very patient for sure.
Yeah, we were very patient, but it obviously it worked out. But I will tell you, when I first was able to, when Bill and I talked about Becky, we both were like, if we can get her, this would be amazing. I mean, we knew that, and we knew it was going to be a game changer, because that's all she does. She changes the landscape of where her feet are. And so we're excited about that too.
So many compliments you heard from Nikki. And again, you should see the link right here. And then also, of course, in the show notes to the full context, the full interview, or press conference and media availability with Becky Hammon, the next head coach of the Las Vegas Aces. We did get some other information, and I highly recommend that you check this out. I will also be writing an article for Forbes Sports Money. I have one of my links in the show notes because I already wrote about this right before the announcement and then right after the announcement, giving some context. But here's what we know. know, Bill Laimbeer will remain with the Las Vegas Aces. He will not be the head coach. But if you heard from Nikki Fargas, and again, watch the whole thing, the link is in the description, and you're going to hear a little bit of a clip coming up next. But there were conversations with Bill, with Nikki, about Bill moving on from being a head coach. And so his comments at the end of last season are not all that surprising. So let me take you to what Bill Laimbeer said the game and the night that the Las Vegas Aces were eliminated from the WNBA playoffs in 2021 after losing to the Phoenix Mercury.
They have two outstanding, mentally strong players, Taurasi and Griner. They will that onto their team. They hung in there. They made the big plays. We need to acquire that trait, whether it is we grow up or whether we acquire something. But it's something that this team has consistently lacked throughout the course of the year is a leadership of steeliness. Someone just sitting there says, no, this is how we do it. This is what's going to happen. And they have that. We don't. So hopefully through learning experience, I've been on all sides where we grew into it and or where we acquired it. I've been on all sides of that one. So what happens going forward, I'm unclear. Throughout the course of the season, I think that we did the best of our ability to understand who we are and what we're about. It was a very difficult situation to manage with a lot of good players, trying to find playing time and opportunities for them to grow as individuals and get their name out there in the basketball world. It's between the youngsters and those that are, past their time or not past their time, that are long of tooth. We tried to manage it as best as possible. I give my assistants all the credit in the world. I'm a manager. I'm not a coach. They have all the energy in the world. They did a great job. Tanisha and Vanessa were unbelievable this year, getting this team to where it needed to be. They have the energy that I don't have. So I left them, give them free rein to do whatever they want to. They did an outstanding job, which is one of the things this team needed was accountability and discipline. And they provided it in spades. Unfortunately, down the stretch, we needed mental toughness. Didn't happen. We lost, and that's the way it goes.
Oh, and if you remember right here on Locked On Women's Basketball, I broke that down. I've been talking for years. Come on, my Liberty people. You know it's the truth. I've been talking about for years, just having a lot of questions about what Bill Laimbeer was doing and if it was maybe time for him not to be a head coach. I thought he's a great GM. Thought he's a great business mind. Obviously, when the Las Vegas Aces made their run to the final, and there were, of course, we're always talking about flights in the WNBA, he was one of the voices that really pushed to get the WNBA to allow the Las Vegas Aces, who had the money, to do a charter flight. So Bill Laimbeer, he has a place in basketball and certainly in women's basketball. Angel McCautry saying that Bill Laimbeer doesn't get enough credit for being an advocate as he is. That being said, those comments, Bill, oh man. And he kind of threw his players under the bus, calling them immature. So it sounds to me like Nikki Fargas was saying that even before that press conference, that Bill Laimbeer was on his way out and ready to walk off into the sunset. And who do they scoop up? Oh my goodness. None other than Becky Hammon. Are you kidding me? And we're going to close with Becky Hammon once again, talking about why she came back to the WNBA.
Why have you never closed the door on coming back to the WNBA?
Oh, Tina, I never closed the door on the WNBA because I love the WNBA. It's where I come from. It gave me my base in professional sports. I played 16 years. This is 8 years, with Coach Pop and the Spurs. So I'm working on 24 years in a professional arena. And I'm super, super grateful for all those years because it was really all training ground for me for what I'm going to do next. And I've also learned to never say never or that I'm not going to do something because generally that's what I end up doing. Like, I'll never do that. Oh, yes, I will. So I've learned to just keep my options open and be open-minded. I try to be an open-minded individual. And so obviously when Nikki called, I listened. And obviously we came to terms and agreements and the rest of it.
As always, I want to thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen of the day. We're back in 2022. We're coming with all the energy. I am so excited for what is to happen. Not only did we get a Becky Hammon press conference, but it is expected that the New York Liberty are going to announce Sandy Brondello as their next head coach. We already saw Jackie Jamelis. She's taken another role outside of coaching with Disrupt the Game. So as I deduced and kind of talked about right here on Locked On Women's Basketball, when we have a head coaching change, there's usually an assistant coach and a coaching staff change. Looks like Jackie Jamelos is out the door. So who will Sandy Brondello bring in? Well, we're just going to have to figure that out once we get the official announcement. It has not been officially announced. Ramona Shelburne of ESPN has been reporting that it is indeed Sandy Brondello to the New York Liberty. I personally think the New York Liberty have needed for a long time a veteran coach. I do think the New York Liberty need to change up a lot of things. It's not just a head coaching thing. I'd like to see them shake up the roster a little bit. I think there's room for some of these players on the New York Liberty roster in the WNBA, but I don't like the combination for the New York Liberty as of right now. What's going to happen if and when Asia Durr is ready to come back to the New York Liberty? I still think that the New York Liberty have too many guards, not enough post players. So we're just going to have to see. But of course, I'll have you at least on Tuesday, Thursdays, and sometimes on Wednesday too, right here on Locked On Women's Basketball. Now it's time for you to go listen to Locked On Bets, your boy Q, and of course, handicapping expert Lee Sterling will get you ready so that you can take advantage of all the betonline.ag odds and props for the 2021-22 season. I guess we're now just in the 2022 season. And oh baby, come April, Becky Hammon is back full-time in the WNBA, and we're going to talk about it right here on Locked On Women's Basketball. This is your basketball and sometimes hockey auntie, Erica Lindsay Ayala, signing out. Peace.